Rhee Jhoon, more commonly known as Grandmaster Jhoon Rhee, was a man of many accomplishments. His greatest achievement was bringing his love of Taekwondo to the United States during the 1960s, although he did so much more in his lifetime. He trained with Bruce Lee, coached Muhammad Ali during the height of his career, and even taught congressional leaders self-defense. Jhoon Rhee was a motivator, an innovator, and will forever be remembered as the father of American Taekwondo. On January 7, 1932, Jhoon Rhee was born in a small Korean village known as Sanyangri, Asan. This was before the war, so there was not yet a North and South Korea. He was a small child. This, coupled with an injury when he was an infant, made those around him believe he would never be good at running or sports. When he was only 6 years old, he knew he wanted to learn martial arts, but there were no schools nearby his small village. Instead, he began a weight training regimen that he would continue until he was 13, building his strength and readying himself if the opportunity to learn would present itself to him. He also began to teach himself violin and harmonica, which he would one day incorporate into his approach to martial arts. It was while he was in his mid-teens that Korea would gain its independence from Japanese rule, which was the first significant event to bring him closer to his goal. Traditional Korean martial arts were banned before, but by 1945, schools began to open at an accelerated rate. In 1947, Rhee joined his first martial arts academy, Chungdo Kwan, and studied under Grandmaster Won Kuk Lee. The Grandmaster took elements of traditional Korean martial arts and combined them with various other influences, which combined techniques in combat, self-defense, sport, and exercise. They named this style Taekwondo, and it was the beginning of a lifelong journey for Rhee. Another milestone of Korea's independence was American movies making their way into Korea for the first time. Jhoon Rhee was captivated by the beautiful people, the scenery, and the atmosphere. It was at that moment he vowed to himself to someday make the USA his home. All was going well until 1950, when the North and South Korean War began. Rhee was able to offer aid to the American forces as a translator since he was so well versed in English by this time, and continued to do so until being drafted into the South Korean army. It was bleak during those days, but Jhoon Rhee persevered. In 1953, a truce was declared, effectively ending the war. His training while involved with the armed forces allowed him to sign up for a program that would send him to America to learn aircraft maintenance. He was accepted, and in 1956, he finally was able to step foot in the country he had long dreamt about. At this point, the only roadblock was how to stay and make America his permanent home. While stationed in Texas, Jhoon Rhee joined the local Methodist church, and much to his surprise, a couple there agreed to sponsor him for residency. So it came to be that the young man with big dreams was finally seeing them come true right before his eyes. He started school in 1958 at San Marcos Southwest State College, and 2 years later transferred to the University of Texas in Austin to study engineering. He would not finish his degree because in 1962, he was offered the chance to move to Washington, D.C. to teach at a karate school. Of course he agreed, and so Jhoon Rhee headed east. However, after arriving at the school, he was shocked to find out how poorly run the establishment was. There were barely any students, and the school couldn't even afford to pay him for his work. Not one to give up, Rhee decided at that moment to open his own school. On June 28, 1962, he founded the first Jhoon Rhee School of Taekwondo. There was so much more to come. He was determined to grow his school as well as spread a love for martial arts. Rhee ran an ad in the sports section of a local newspaper to get the word out, and also let ambassadors stationed in D.C. at the time know of his promise to teach their children self-defense as well as improve and maintain their academic grades. Over 200 people came out to watch his first demonstration, and within 2 months, his enrollment was well over 125 students. Jhoon Rhee also released an iconic commercial referred to as "Don't Bother Me," based off of its memorable catchphrase, and it also helped bolster the popularity of his school.
Call USA 1000. Jhoon Rhee means right for right.
Nobody buys me. Nobody buys me either.
His techniques changed over time thanks to his friendship with the legendary Bruce Lee. Rhee met Lee at Ed Parker's International Karate Championships in 1964. Each was impressed by the other's skill, and a friendship emerged that would benefit both masters. Jhoon Rhee taught Bruce Lee the proper way to execute kicks, improving on techniques that would launch Lee into martial arts movie stardom. In return, Lee taught Rhee what came to be known as the acupunch, an unblockable punch that would be passed down to Muhammad Ali. Their friendship would continue until Bruce Lee's death right before the release of the only movie Jhoon Rhee has ever starred in, 1972's When Taekwondo Strikes. In 1965, a congressman by the name of James Cleveland was mugged outside of the state capitol building. After seeing the story in the paper, Rhee called Cleveland personally and offered to teach him how to defend himself using Taekwondo. Cleveland invited the martial arts teacher to perform a demonstration. Many members of Congress were impressed by Jhoon Rhee's skills, and thus began the Congressional Taekwondo Club. Political leaders such as Newt Gingrich, Greg Meeks, Carolyn Maloney, George H.W. Bush, and our current president, Joe Biden, have all worked with Jhoon Rhee to learn self-defense skills. Jhoon Rhee has also worked with many other famous names. As mentioned before, Muhammad Ali was trained by Rhee and had the martial arts master coach him for several noteworthy fights and appearances. Ali credited the acupunch that Rhee had taught him for winning his fight against Richard Dunn in 1976. Other notable names who have trained under Rhee were Tony Robbins, Jack Anderson, Jack Valenti, and Chuck Norris. Besides teaching Taekwondo to any who would learn, Jhoon Rhee had a few other notable accomplishments. One of his most famous talents was doing over 100 push-ups in 60 seconds, well into his 80s. He invented safety gear for sparring in the 1970s, which is still widely used today. His martial arts ballet style is a highlight of many competitions and demonstrations around the world, highlighting the fact that the style he taught is meant for more than just self-defense. In the year 2000, he was named one of the 200 most famous immigrants of all time by the National Immigration Forum, next to the likes of others like Albert Einstein and Knute Rockne. He was the sole Korean immigrant to make the list. He also created National Teacher Appreciation Day and worked tirelessly with congressional leaders to let it pass the House and Senate. It was signed into law by then-President Reagan on October 16, 1986. Jhoon Rhee passed away on April 30th, 2018 in Arlington, Virginia. Some highly prominent names attended his memorial service, such as Chuck Norris, Linda Lee Caldwell, who is the widow of Bruce Lee, Bob Livingston, Tony Robbins, Paul Ryan, and Larry Hogan. There is now a large list of official Jhoon Rhee instructional schools around the world, including in the USA, Russia, the Ukraine, Uzbekistan, and Kazakhstan. His message still continues to this day: how important education and self-defense are and how uplifting martial arts can be. To build true confidence through strength in my body, honesty in my heart, and knowledge in my mind. To keep friendship with one another and to build a strong and happy community. Never fight to achieve selfish ends, but to develop might for right.